today's tutorial, we're going to be talking about how to bring life back to your dull or flat video images. This is a drone reel that I graded for someone. As you can see in the clips below, I've got a variety of different clips. The thing is with drone cameras, especially before 2020, is they're 8-bit, which means they are not as high quality or the sensor is not as big as some of the cinema cameras that we work with today. But you know, that's quickly changing. There's drones now that look incredible. There are Red cameras that are small enough to be used as a drone. The Red Komodo is a big trailblazer in that area. But for today's tutorial, we're going to see that a lot of the footage I had to work with were shot in flat conditions or, afternoon. So I tried a few different things to bring out the image in terms of exposure, saturation, windows, and we're going to go through all that today. So this is more a video behind the theory, the practicals of what we can do to the image to help make it stand out more, and I'm just showing you the process that I went through to grade this reel, which I found a bit challenging, but again, if I can do this with 8-bit footage, then you can too. And if you are doing this on a camera that's 10-bit or 12-bit, well, you have even more options to work with. So for this first clip here, so this is my grades on the right side. Disable this. This is what I had to work with in the beginning, and this is how I ended up with the final result. So the first image, I usually just do like a base color correction, color, temperature, contrast, saturation, exposure, and then here is where I kind of fine tune. So I wanted to really bring out his jacket, the blue, maybe make it brighter, and so that's what I did. Again, when you're working with 8-bit footage, you can see the image kind of breaks up. That's the challenge. With 10-bit or even 12-bit, like Red, ARRI, or even film, this won't really be an issue, but I was able to make it work because it doesn't show up in the video. It all blends in, so it works. So let's go back here. Next thing I did is I made his white do-rag pop. As you can see here, just little subtle things to help bring out the image, because you basically want a bright point and a dark point, and that's how you're going to create your contrast. So just did a bit of a global adjustments after applying my specific grades. And the next thing I do is vignetting in windows. So this is a huge thing that I do with a lot of my clips to help bring the viewer's eye towards the center of attention, where I want the eye to go. So for this part here, as you can see, this is without and with, and I made this outside one layer and then did the opposite on here for this one. So I left the center pretty much untouched, and then the outer layer is where I did most of the work. I basically just brought down the curves a little bit, and then I went into the color wheels and just gave it a bit of color there. Then the next thing I do is sometimes you add another vignette, rarely, but sometimes you do, just to really bring out the image more. Okay, and then the last two nodes are basically noise reduction and a green, like a film green. Okay, so that's basically the workflow I really go through with my images. So we'll just speed through this, and I'm going to show you the little things I did to different images. Okay, maybe this one as well, just quickly. So I focused on making the white pop. So I isolated a bit of here and then worked with that image. Isolated here, worked with that image. Okay, I really made it pop in the vignette. I focused on the center, kept the outside a bit untouched, and here I was able to make it pop. This one was an interesting one. I had to grade it a couple of times before I figured out, okay, I can make this image pop through color, because the rest of the image was pretty flat to begin with. And it's all one tone basically, so the process I went through, set up a base layer, isolated, did some exposure, saturation, isolated this, added some sharpness, and then this I used for a bit of color. Again, 8-bit, the image breaks up a bit here, so you don't want to push the image too far when you're working with lower quality image. Here it breaks up here as well. You can see, yeah. But for this tutorial, I'm going to show you how I made the yellow and the blue pop. Okay, I just went into this section here and hue versus saturation. So I just got the yellow, brought up the saturation as you can see, and I grabbed the blue, brought up the saturation. So that helped really make the image pop. I would do a bit more work here just because the image is breaking up here. But the next thing I want to show you is this. So it was pretty muddy to begin with at first. I basically just, balanced it. And then I isolated the blue and just gave it like a nice, fresh, bright blue. Then did some global adjustments. Then added a vignette. Again, did a bit more balancing here. So for the railings, that's how I decided this is how I want to make the image pop. So go here, I'm trying to show you how this, I basically just use the color wheels to push it. Just a gentle push with the midtones, because that's really where it is in terms of exposure. It's a midtone. Okay, next thing I did, grain, sharpen. Cool. Next, this one was pretty straightforward. This one light source really. So I focused on really making the colors, the different colors in the image pop. So I isolated even this part here, the orange and pinks, before and after, and the blues on his jacket. I could do another one to make the yellow pop, and then a vignette here as well. That helped a bit. As you can see, I got to re-expose the image. Even though the image is flat to begin with, you're able to adjust the exposure a bit by adding vignettes. And again, I just did a little push into the color, into blue. This one's a bit interesting. This one large light source, the sun. Here is before and after. Okay. Oops. My base exposure adjustment and my selection. So I made this corner brighter here to mimic the sun. And then the reds, Just wanted to make the reds pop. So I did this. As you can see here, I isolated the red, brought up the saturation. A little vignette, brought up the exposure in the center. Again, just adds a bit of crunch. This is how you create a contrast without using the contrast slider. You can use different sorts of exposures around the image and you have color to work with. And you've got these tools, saturation, hue, luminosity. There's so much you can do with any image you have to work with. This one required a bit more color correcting than the rest. This is what I had to begin with. Just really, before I make any color grades to an image, I color correct it first. Okay, so I got a balance here that I wanted to reduce the greens. So did that. You can see here, I just brought down the saturation in the yellows, greens, and then wanted to make the red pop. So increase the saturation down here, and that's it. Oh, a global adjustment. Use the wheels to help color correct it a bit more. This one was fun. For some reason I had a hard time making this sand bright, kind of look like sand. And again, the sky's a bit blown out. Had to do a bit of work here, but kind of came together. So this is the original. Okay, so increase the saturation here. Fixed a bit of the overblown sky by adding a mask and then bringing down the highlights. You can also track it to move with the image in this section here. Flat image to begin with. Exposure, contrast, saturation. Vignetted a bit of this area just to add some sharpness and contrast. Made the center brighter. Made the background a bit darker so we're more focused on her. Global adjustment. Layers. That's it. This one was easy. There's not as many nodes because the lighting is great. This is not a flat image to begin with. There's this clear contrast and divide here. So all I had to do was basically color correct this image, and then that was it. I didn't even have to color grade it. It was already like this tone. You can always adjust it, the color temperature, to play around like that. I think that's what I did. I just increased the warmth, and that's all I had to do. This one was interesting. I found there wasn't much for me to work with, so I focused on making the field pop and the stands pop. That's the main thing I did. And then a bit of the oranges. This one, you can see I made his motorcycle pop more than anything. Color corrected it. Made the orange pop. You can see here. Oh, and then I worked a bit on the sky. It's not much, but a little bit of color there. Vignette. Final details. Sometimes you just get an image you can't really work with. Like you can already see here, like the image kind of breaks up whenever I try to do some work. So I kept it neutral for the most part. I did want to change the water's color, but I couldn't because I kept breaking up the image. You can even see as I'm scrubbing just under the dude here, the image kind of breaks up. This is what I came up with. This is the last shot of the tutorial. This was fun, you know, there was a lot to work with in this image, so I had a lot of fun really playing around and seeing how I can make it better. So this is what I had to start. Exposed it, then added this blue. I like this blue and I just adjusted it until I found a blue that I liked. So I did that with saturation. And brought out the sky a bit. Then I brought up the reds, just saturated it a bit. And that's it. I'll do it again from here. This is a cool angle. So I exposed it, fixed the blues, made this area pop with the reds and oranges just by increasing the saturation. Vignette. And then, you know, sharpen, noise reduction, film grain if you want. I hope you enjoyed this tutorial. I just touched up on a few things that you can do to work with a flat or dull image. Like this video and subscribe if you want to see more. I've got other videos coming where we go into the details of all the things that I showed you. Thanks for stopping by.